even if it's just, someone asking you for directions. And you tell them, yeah, you go straight. This happened in Munich. Like, this guy, we were asking for directions, and this guy basically, insisted on walking the whole way with us, And he wasn't getting any benefits from that. It's a completely selfless act. And if you've ever done that, you feel really good, right? Like, why should you feel good? It's because giving and receiving are one, because we're not really separate. Okay, so all of the things that we're drawn to are built, or they're coming from the new story of the self and the new story of the people. But again, our systems are still stuck in the old, which is why we feel so alienated from our systems, and which is why after we come back from events like this and go back to the normal world, that's why we feel alienated. So I have no idea how long I'm supposed to talk. But just in case I'm supposed to finish soon, let me say a few more important things, like really practical things. So I guess one practical thing would be, how do we live from the realization of connection? This is another thing that we can't actually do as an act of will. We can't stay in this. You might have a realization here. You might have a psychedelic experience, an insight that's not just a mental insight, but it goes all the way to your bones. Or it might not involve psychedelics. It might just be just how you're interacting with people and that felt sense of what's possible. And you might have that, and then you're like, I want to hold on to this. This could change my life. I want to live from this place. But then you go back, and it begins to fade, and you try to hold on to it. But more and more hands are tugging at your ankles, pulling you back into the past. So what do you do about that? How do you stay? You can only do it with help, I believe, which is one of my causes for optimism today, is that there are more and more of us living more and more in these new stories. And so when we begin to doubt and we begin to think that we're crazy, then other people who are also inhabiting this new place can say no. They can pull us back into the experience of connection and say, no, you're not crazy. This is a new logic, the logic of connection. And I'll help you believe. If you can't believe right now, I'll help you believe. And then when I am weak, when I can't believe, you'll help me believe too. And together we can inhabit this new state. Which is why enlightenment is a group project. Thich Nhat Hanh said that. He said, the next Buddha will be a Sangha, a spiritual community, not just one person. Because one person cannot hold it all now anymore. Consciousness has grown to the point where only a group, or maybe all of humanity together, can embody enlightenment. Matthew Fox said the same thing about the second coming of Christ. He said the first coming was in the person of Jesus. The second coming is the advent of Christ consciousness in everybody. And how could it be otherwise from the perspective of the connected self? How could it be possible that one person is enlightened and somebody else isn't? That could only be possible in the world of separation, where I'm separate from you, therefore I can be enlightened and you're not. But from the perspective of connection, every person we see is a mirror of ourselves, and if they're behaving in a way that's reprehensible, we can ask ourselves, how is that reflecting something in me? Or how does it serve me to have this relationship, or what thoughts and beliefs that were hidden to me are manifesting in this situation, so that they come into the light of consciousness, so that they can be experienced, felt, and healed. That's the approach of the connected self, of non-separation. So we can help each other occupy this connected state. And that's why I think that gatherings like this are so important, because we all come together and remind ourselves of what's true, of what we have known in our hearts our whole lives. But it was a lonely knowledge for many of us, a lonely knowledge, where sometimes it felt we were the only one in the world who knew the truth, and every voice in our head doubted it. And that spark of knowledge in the center of your chest was almost extinguished, but never quite extinguished. There's always an ember there that amazingly, at the slightest experience, the slightest tinder, it bursts into flame again. It bursts into hope again. It bursts into, yeah, I was right the whole time. Yeah. That experience proves it. It is supposed to be this way.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's practical thing number one. It's not something you can do for yourself, but it's something you can do for each other. And when you give that gift to another person, then eventually it's going to come back to you too. And that gift, it might not be words that say, oh, we're all interconnected, so don't worry about it, right? That doesn't always work. In fact, it almost never works. You're not here to remind me to finish soon, are you? You're just taking my picture. Okay, thanks. But what works is to give people an experience that violates the laws of separation. For example, an experience of forgiveness. For example, the experience of receiving generosity. That just, because in the world of separation, that doesn't happen. In the world of separation, more for you is less for me. So if somebody gives you something, they must have an agenda. Like, what's the string that's attached there? What are they actually trying to get from me? So if you act in a way that is impervious to that interpretation, that you can't explain away, then that doesn't fit into that person's universe. I'm wondering whether to tell a personal story about that. Yeah? But it might be embarrassing for me. No? Well, okay.
We won't judge you. Go ahead.
Yeah, you won't judge me. Yeah. Well, okay, so there I was, living in Taiwan. I lived there all in my 20s. And there came a point where I was really unhappy. I'd been there a few years, and I was missing my culture, missing home, missing good music. Actually, I was really missing good music. And because there was, on the radio there was nothing but kind of like this imitation pop music. Taiwanese singers singing imitations of Western songs that I hated to begin with. And the imitations were even worse. And so, well, one of my friends told me about, hold on, let me drink a little water here. Okay, so one of my friends said, hey, there's a outdoor music concert this evening. Let's go. So, okay, I went there. It was on the banks of the Yonghe River, which was at the time a completely dead river with piles of garbage burning on both banks. The smog was so thick that it stung your eyes. And the music was just as I've described, awful. And I was like so dejected. I finally I couldn't take it anymore. I started walking home on the concrete. And then I look up and I see 4 angels coming toward me. Actually, they were 4 guys from Seattle. But they were kind of like radiating light almost, and they came up to me and they're like, "Hey, you're not going home already, are you? Our band hasn't played yet." So, okay, I went and listened to them and they were amazing. And I was just totally awestruck. They were magnificent. And I became friends with them. And I really admired them, and I really wanted them to like me and to admire me as well. One of them was, his name was Jimmy. I ended up naming my son after him, actually. And so I wanted him to admire me and to like me. And so one time I got into this conversation with him where I kind of casually dropped that I spoke fluent Chinese, but did it in a way that it wasn't obviously bragging, but would actually give me credit for being modest as well as speaking fluent Chinese. And I also let slip that I made some exorbitant amount of money, way more than he could possibly make because he was only a kindergarten teacher in an English kindergarten. And, I did that the same way, and I was kind of playing my game, and then all of a sudden I realized that he saw through it completely. Completely. I was transparent to him. I was naked. And I felt this withering shame begin to come up. And he looked at me and he said, with total love, he said, "All right, brother." Like celebrating me, seeing through me completely into everything that I thought was ugly about myself, and loving me. And that didn't fit into my universe. That was something that couldn't happen. That event was a miracle, and it told me that my universe is just going to have to change. It's just going to have to grow. This is a power that we all have. So this is practical advice number 1, is to be ready to give people an experience of connection, to give people an experience of non-separation, to give people an experience of love, to give people an experience of being totally accepted for who they are. Because our whole civilization, all of the ugliness that we see around us is built on separation. Maybe one more thing. One way to describe the world of interbeingness is that it's the world of the gift.
Oh, hello, you're here again. Hi.
Gifts are what create the experience